Hello, my name is Michael. I'm from Platform Control, a brand of BIODI. And today we want to talk about Microsoft Fabric. In particular, we want to talk about skill sets or skills you need to work with Fabric. And in order to do so, we will start with a typical BI project, a typical data project, and I will explain step by step for which kind of work you need, which kind of skills, which kind of knowledge about programming, and so on. So first overall, we are in a situation where we want to build a data solution with Fabric. So the first thing we need is some kind of workspace. And I implemented this workspace demo, a BI project with Fabric, just a normal workspace in Power BI or now Fabric. And the licensing is a Fabric trial. So at least we need the trial. We also can use dedicated capacities. But for us, now we're starting with a trial. And this workspace is completely empty. So there's nothing in this workspace. And so the first thing, if we want to start with a Fabric project, we have to think about the use case. It can be a big use case like building an enterprise data lakehouse, or we can start with a small use case. For obviously reason, it makes not a lot of sense for us to start with like a role reporting environment for a whole huge company in order to get each step in a feasible way to access all the different things step by step. So we will start with, I would call it a small reporting project. Let's assume we know 2 or 3 data sources. We know how the data should look like, have to look like, to produce the reports, the dashboard that we need. So we now can start and can say, okay, we want to connect the data. So we are at the first point. We want connecting the data. We know which data we need. And now we can start. Now we can start building our solution in Microsoft Fabric. The first thing, and this is a really cool thing, we see a little slider here above. And now there's something called task flows. It's a little thing, but it will help you. If I select the task flows, on the right side, you see different general tasks. So we are seeing basic data analytics. We are seeing data analytics using SQL endpoints, that we will talk about later. We see the basic medallion architecture. So this is one of the go-to architectures if about data lakehouses. So, and more in the direction of real-time analytics. So for us, we want just to start with a basic data analytics structure. So nothing too complicated, just to get the right things to start, just to talk about which skills you need at which point of the process. So, and the first thing is, it does not a lot. So we are just getting 3 steps. It says collect data, store data, and create a visualization. And basically, if you're going for the very easiest approach, it's enough. So we can collect data from an API, we can collect data from a data warehouse, a transactional database. So we can connect to various sources, then store our data. So here we can store our data. We can choose a data lakehouse, or we can choose a classical data warehouse. However, in the back end, it's always the one lake. You maybe heard before, but for now, just have a look. We start with collecting, we're storing, and then we're creating a Power BI visualization. So let's go a step further, because if you use it like this, there's no transformation of the data inside. So we could do transformation on the Power BI side, or we could do data transformation maybe in the lakehouse and the storage side, but it's not clearly pointed ahead that we have to do it. So let's erase it. Let's start over. So I just say select a new task flow. And now I want to go a little bit more complex, not too complex, but just to introduce some more steps. And now we're seeing it a little bit more, complicated, I wouldn't say, but a little bit more. So we are starting with get data. So again, we have to get the data. Then we're storing the data. They included some little icon for analyze and train, so some machine learning type of stuff. We will not cover this now, but just see it's a typical easy line of working with your data in Microsoft Fabric. Okay, let's start with get data. So now we are for, I would say a crucial point. We need the skills of getting data, of how to connect to different sources. And as you can see, I can click on this new item, and now I'm provided with different types of how I can get data. So typical things you can do is you can use a data pipeline. If you have like SQL or PostgreSQL or some kind of other SQL or even Azure AWS, you have the possibility to directly connect to the data and build like a copy shop. So this means you can copy complete tables from one database in practice soon. So you can also use like notebooks, and you can work with Python, so you will be able to work with the pie chart notebooks, because you can use like typical things like data frame and just make your transformations in PyChart, PySpark, and write it back to your data lakehouse. So so you can also use data flows Gen 2. What is data flows Gen 2? If you knew Power BI, you knew Power Query. And basically, data flows Gen 2 are relying on the same technology. This means if you're familiar with Power Query and if you're using all the things you can do with Power Query, you're basically also well trained of using data 2. Of course, there's some little differences, but the basic principles of Power Query and data flow Gen 2 are the same. Okay. And you see also some other stuff, so you can also mirror some databases. This means you can just directly bring them in and connect to these databases. At the moment, these are Azure SQL databases and Snowflake and CosmoDB. Okay, first step. Let's have a look into one of the first steps, and we want to start with like bulk import with the data pipeline. The data pipeline later, the pipeline can also be used to do like an orchestration of your solution. And I will just call it that get data and say create. And now it's open our data pipeline. This data pipeline basically is the same, like if you know the Azure Data Factory, it's the same. So it's basically working in the same way as the Azure Data Factory is working. Okay, now we can go for different pipeline activities. So as you can see on top, you see the basic activities you can steer, you can trigger. But for now, to just get data, I want to just say, I want to start with practice sample data. Okay. Now I have to select a connection. Let's go. sometimes you need to wait a little bit for finding the right connections. So here you see my lake houses. At the moment, I don't want to start with my lake houses. So I could now just get the data out of my lake houses. But obviously, I don't want to start with my lake. I want to do a copy job. Yes, I want to cancel this. I want to cancel this. Here I can start with this kind of copy job where I get different sources, and here I can choose from, as you can see, all kinds of data sources. Even I can go for view more. I see typically databases I easily can connect. So this ranks from typical lake approaches like Snowflake, or typical things like, let's see, we find also Postgres or Postgres Azure, or we find even things on Amazon. So you will find a lot of different databases. You even can find them here to say, okay, I can connect against different stuff. But let's start with some sample data. And we want to start with not the biggest sample data. Just let's connect against the public holidays as a paquet file, or here we have worldwide importers. Maybe this is good because it also shows us something what is in our preferred structure of a star scheme. So what does it mean? Star scheme means it's a basic modeling technology. Okay, we see an error. Hopefully it will work. So, and now we started with our connection that we said, okay, we want to copy it from a database. And we also now can say, okay, we want to copy it in. So we have to say what is the source and the destination. So we say the source is our sample data. And now we have to set up the destination. I want to use a lakehouse. I want to use a new lakehouse, call it a demo fabric skills. As you can see, you also have to keep an eye on your namings because it's not allowed to have spaces. So it's basically the same like the old school data warehousing where spaces are not allowed. So now I created a new connection, a new table, and say, okay, I want to copy this whole table from my source to my destination. And I can also enable some partitions. So can say, okay, what is my partition if it's a real big table? Or here you can see I can say I want to use this for the dimension table. And next thing I have to say, I have to wait for the mapping of the columns. So always, if you want to copy something from the new and the old table. So, okay, my blob storage does not work. So something sometimes happen if you're showing a demo that something is not working as it should. But I hope you basically get the gist of connecting the data and shoveling them up to Power BI or Fabric. So let's try it again. Say, okay, I want to use a lakehouse. And I want to say Fabric Skills. Create and connect. And as you can see, it's also easy to create some kind of obviously, I have to say load to a new table. So maybe this was my mistake. And we now can start because before the table does not existing. Now we want to say, okay, we're using the actual table and we're loading this into our lakehouse. As you can see, the basic skill set for this kind of work is, yeah, if you have worked with Azure before, it's a big advantage, because a lot of the clicks and a lot of the stuff is basically the same like in Azure, especially in the Azure ADF. On the other side, it's also a big advantage if you have worked with some kind of databases before, and you know the basic skill set, what you need to get data from one database in another. And as you can see, at some points, you will always get some problems, as I get, but it does not matter. It's not so important for us, because we just want to talk about what are the skills for each single Power BI or part of Fabric in this case. Okay, it just not work. I don't know why. Something failed. Maybe, yeah, it does not allow me anything. But I hope you get the gist how to copy data from one part into another. So one possibility is, obviously, you can use data pipelines. So, and this is in the back, nothing else as Azure Data Factory. Yes, I want to cancel it. I just use a template, and now if you're seeing the templates, you're seeing there's a lot of different templates already existing, and just I just click on this to show how this can look like. Here we can implement our different connection and can compare the delta between two databases. So you see there are also a lot of templates you can just use to implement a solution. So this is the Azure Data Factory. To show it a little bit, or in this case, to show it a little bit more, I can just start with a job, copy data, and now you get different parts. And now you can build on the different parts. Assume we copied the data, assume we just did this, and now we want to start and say, okay, let's do some kind of next steps. So I can say, what if the step is successful? Maybe then I want to do a notebook. I can bring in a notebook, can assess this. And if you click on the step, you can always say which notebook should be used from your obviously I have no notebook, so I can't use a notebook, but here you see how you can plan your so step by step. You can say, okay, I want to do this first, then this, and you find a lot of different activities on the top. So we can have just a look in all the activities. So basically this reaches from using data flows, using notebooks, using some kind of loops, setting variables, using the invoke another pipeline. So basically here you find all the stuff you need for some of heavy transactions, of copying data, of getting data from one source to another destination. So here you can start with getting your data. Here you can start with orchestration of your solution. Okay, let's go to another part of this getting data part. I just will open this get data stuff, and if I click on get data, I see also I can add new items, and as seen before, I can also start with a data flow. And the data flow, as said before, it's basically Power Query. And if I just open this one, it should open it. Creating an item. Now we are creating a data flow. Oh, nice. Unknown error, always good. As you can see, sometimes there are still some things you have to wait for. Okay. Now we are starting with a data flow. And if you know Power BI, Power Query, you see it looks pretty much the same. So I can also start from a template, but I have no template here. So let's get data from another source. And here I see again all the different stuff I connected before. I see my new created lakehouse. I see some of my demo lakehouses. So now I can start with one of the demo lakehouses. I also see here on the top again different sources you can connect against. So, and here you have even more sources than you have seen before in the data pipelines. So as you can see, really flexible, and you can have a look what data sources you need. Again, we can look for the other stuff, and you see all the different other stuff. You can connect directly with this data flows. Okay, yeah, let's start an easy way. I just say get another source, and I see, okay, I have recently used sources. Let's start with the demo lakehouse. And now it's connecting against my demo lakehouse, what is in a different workspace. So this means also, if you're later working with different workspaces, you can connect to each other, you can use them. So let's wait for if this is connected, that we can say, okay, which queries I want to use. And here I see this lakehouse, and I have an easy table I can just connect to. I will connect to this table. It's a table from the US Police, about the US Police, and I just want to create this as a table or as a data flow. Now I see on the left my table, and now I can do all the stuff I know from typical ETL tools, so typical extract, transform, load tools. So if someone is knowing something like Talent, something like Nine, something like Informatica, basically all the stuff you can do with this kind of tools, you are enabled to do here. So I can just say, okay, maybe I don't want to do a lot. Let's do just a little stuff. Just get rid of some columns. I can say choose columns, and I want just to get the date. I want to get the country, the county, the state, and maybe the age, the name, and the gender, and say, okay, now it's implementing these steps, and I just get the list of the selected columns. And as you can see on the top, we have also done the type guessing. And obviously you can set it by your own, but here the skill important for you is it's a basic knowledge of data transformation. So we will talk about the star schema later, but if you're using tools like Power Query or later the notebooks, you need to know how you want to shape your data in order to get a proper data model. But in the end, if you know some kind of ETL tools, you will work with Power Query just fine. Okay, now we did this, we used some transformations, assume we did a lot of more transformation, but now we have to do some kind of assignment. We have to say, okay, we want to have this in a lakehouse. We want to assign this to our lakehouse. And you can use this above. Okay, I can say add data destination. And here I can say, okay, we want to go for lakehouse. And I can say just, I want to use a lakehouse. I'm logged in with my editorial stuff, and now I see my lakehouses. And what I can do now, I can say, okay, I want to go for my lakehouse, and I see my both lakehouses. I can choose one, and I can say next. So now we are saying, okay, we are used to data transformation, and now we can say we want to bring this into the lakehouse. And we are still in the stage of data preparing. We are still in the stage of data cleansing, data preparation. So we are before any kind of visualization. We are just preparing our data for later usage. Okay, so now as assigned the lakehouse, as you can see below, I can also have a different view, such a diagram view, to see step by step what we have done. So in this view, you would also see if you have done some joins, if you have done some appendings. So all the steps will be displayed. It helps you to keep a track on what you have done with your data. Okay, next step, I have to publish this. We are leaving the, I would say, the GUI interfaces of doing things, because we have one last thing we could use to to transform our data. Let's see what I mean. We have another, if I go for item. So basically, we are a mix between get and prepare. So let's assume we are stored everything, and we do not want to make the transformation with Power Query, so with data flows or with data pipelines. We want to go for the typical, I would say, a programmer approach and say, okay, I want to prepare my data with a notebook. So here you can see, I can say data engineering with a notebook. Let's have a look. So obviously you can use this notebooks to connecting APIs, to connecting all kind of data. It has the full flexibility of PySpark, so basically Python. You can also change this to different different programming languages. So if you're feel free to test this. I'm not the programmer guy, but let's have a look. Okay, at the moment, we are not connected to any lakehouse, so we can't use any data. We could just write some APIs, questions, and use them. But here we can connect to a lakehouse, and we want to connect to an existing lakehouse. So also we could introduce a new lakehouse. And obviously, we want to use our skill lakehouse. Let's connect both and say add, because I forget where I saved my tables. So as you can see, we are seeing here our lakehouse. We are seeing here our data, and now we can just start with introducing some kind of transactions, or we just can build some kind of data stuff. So let's see. I have to refresh it. Yeah, as you can see, now it's connected. Before, the data was not in. Now we can just drag and drop it in and creating a data frame. We could now just start our job. You see there's a PySpark session started. And you can use this if you have skills in Python to do all the stuff you want to do with Python with your data. So here you can pivot data, you can make loops, everything you can think of, what you can do within this kind of notebooks. So this can be used for creating new tables, for enhancing our tables, and so on and so on. So basically what I did a data frame, nothing complex, and just said, okay, show me the data. So I did not really make any transformation or any cleansing, but obviously you could do. So here you see also you can open this in VS Code and add this to a pipeline, what we have seen before. So what I also can do, I can use this kind of data wrangler, and this helps me to just clean my data based on some kind of GUI. So it also provides me some kind of insights into my data. So it's one way to make it a little bit easier to access. Obviously, if you're good in Python, you will not need this, but it's a basic help for a lot of people to make it easier to use. So I can, for example, also say different schemes. I can drop columns, I can sort them, I can choose the format, convert to lowercase, and so on. So you see there are a lot of operations you just can use based on this data bringer. Okay, go back. Here, this is also a third possibility to transform data. A typical way is if you want to get your data, you're using pipelines, notebooks, or data flows. For big data, often the pipelines are used. For smaller data and more like self-service approaches, the data flows are used. And for API connection, often the notebooks are the best approach, because in the notebooks you can also use offsets and so on. So here we have the most programming approach for getting data in your lakehouse. Okay, let's move one step further. And if we are going one step further, we are going back to here. And now we are seeing our store. So it's not the right order completely, but let's assume we are on the store. Let's assume we see some items. So on the store, we basically see three main items. I would say the lakehouse, the warehouse, the event house. The data mart, I would cut out for now. Event house, it's for real-time analytics. So if you have a real-time use case, then the event house is something you want to use, because then you can just do the real-time analytics. For the most of BI cases or data analytic cases where you want to see data in a certain way, you will go with the lakehouse or with the warehouse. Because of its flexibility, I prefer to going with the lakehouse, because in the lakehouse you can use classical SQL as well as using Python. So you could do all the data transformation within the warehouse with Python or with SQL. You can also use SQL in PyCharm. So you have all the ways to shape your data. If you go for the warehouse, you are limited to SQL. So basically, it's also a question of what lies in your skill set. Let's go for our storage. So we have created different things. Okay, you see I created by accident a lot of data flows. This was not my intention, but we also see our lakehouse. So we see our demo lakehouse, and if I click on it, I can access it. So see what I can do. No, it's empty. So this is the wrong lakehouse. Let's go back. And now I can also say, okay, go to this one. Yeah, here we see the right lakehouse. And as you can see, here we also see again the possibilities to say, okay, I can work with a notebook and transform my data in the notebook. I can also use, and this is really interesting, the SQL endpoint. This means if we are very fit in SQL, we just can click on SQL endpoint, and you can also do all the stuff you want to do in SQL. So basically now we are talking about a typical stuff you can use with Management Studio, with DB Beaver. So this is a typical endpoint you can use to interact with your data via standard TSQL. So I know there are a lot of different SQL accents, but we are talking here about basically standard SQL. As you can see here, we see also a lot of stuff in the back end, but of course we are seeing our shooting table, and now we can work with the shooting table in the next steps of data transformation. Obviously, one important part we are missing in this little kind of demo, we are missing the part of data modeling, because if you're going for a BI solution with Power BI or with Microsoft, you heard about the star schema a lot. And obviously, if you have a single table with a really easy solution, it's a little bit over engineering, but in the most cases, you want to go for a star scheme. You want to go for a fact and dimensional based modeling approach. And if you want to go for such an approach, at some point, you need some kind of skill of this kind of data modeling, how to model your data to get the most out of your data. Okay. But let's go back and assume we stored our data, we did everything with our data, and we also did the modeling, we had the knowledge of doing the modeling. And now we are going from the, in former times, I would say, more back end. So this is more like the kitchen where you make everything. And now we are coming to the presentation of the data, to the working for the departments with the data. So we are starting with just this data lakehouse. We created the data lakehouse, and something automatically created if you are working with Fabric is some kind of default data set. So this default data set, this semantic model, enables you to use Power BI. It enables you to get directly a Power BI data model. It's also possible to create this Power BI data model by your own. This means you can also say, I want to use this table, and this table to create a semantic model. In our case, we just have one table. It's automatically created this semantic model. And if I click on it, now I'm in the step of how to use this data. And we just can explore the data, and we just can start with it. Let's do it. And also you see it's introduced that we can see the DAX queries. So what I can do. So we talked about, as you can see, today is not the day of the data models. Let's go back. Let's go. And you see on the left side all the different items we've created. So basically everything from our get data, about our notebook, about our Fabric skill, and at least our Power BI report. Okay, so one step back. We are here to create our semantic model, and I can just go for our endpoint. And here we could also work with, as you can see, new visual query or new SQL query. And here I can also implement change my model. And I don't want to use it. And here we can say, okay, new report. Yes, I want to continue with this source. I don't want to change the semantics, the default semantic. Here you come to the skills that you basically know from working with Power BI in combination of connecting against your database. And as you can see now, I see my data model. And if you're talking about data model, something what has to come in mind is the using of DAX. So data analysis expression. This is really important for all kind of analytics. For us, basically, it's pretty simple because we have a really easy approach, and the only thing we can count is the rows and the numbers, but we can't sum up anything. But what I can do is I can just use, for example, a county, or I can just say county, bring this in. Now it makes a direct query. Later in a project, you have also to talk with your persons about what is the right approach, using a direct query, using a direct lake. We are here with direct lake, or using an import mode. But this is not important for now, because we are talking about basic skill sets. And for now, the basic skill set is you need, after you have implemented your lakehouse, after you have implemented your data transformation with Power Query, Python, or something else, you need to build a data model. The data model, we assume, is pre-built in your data lakehouse. You just have to connect to the tables, as we do, to one table, and now you have to implement DAX, the data analysis expression. You will use this for all kind of analytics, because this DAX is one of the most important skills if working with Power BI. It's part of the semantic model. So there you can argue if it is back end or front end. At least you need it for both. So you can't say it's directly only front end. You can't say it's only back end, because in a lot of cases you need it for dynamic headers or something like this. Okay, so just displayed it like this and just say, okay, I want to do counting, just do, yeah, exactly. So now we see, okay, a lot of counties are not mentioned. We could change this, as you know, into state. Let's do it like this. Okay. Basic thing for this step, you will need some basic knowledge of how create reports, some basic knowledge of what you want to show. And before you build a report, you always should talk with the people, make some kind of prototyping, some kind of wireframing, that you get a gist of how your report should look like and which business decision or something like this should be supported by your report. So it's always important to know what the people want to say, who will receiving, who will using a report, a dashboard, and so on. So let's assume we are fine with this report, or nearly fine. I can also bring in, let's do the age. And what you're seeing here, it's a so-called implicit measure. Obviously not the thing we want to do later. It's also a possibility to use the explicit measures. This is what you will do in DAX. So just the average age, and now I can say, okay, I want to save this. I want to save this file, and save this file as demo data. Yeah, it's okay. So demo data in our workspace. So let's have a look. And if I now go back to my workspace, you see a lot of stuff is now here. I now got also these visualization demo data. And the cool thing is, here we have our flows, and I can assign something out of my data to a flow part. So I can also create all folders, but now I've assigned it, and if I click on it, it's just filters me down to everything connected to this part of visualization. So basically, if I click on get data, I see everything for get data. For store, I see nothing, but I can say I want to assign my lake houses or my lake house to this, and here prepare, I see already I did one notebook. So let's move on with visualization. because we can now use this visualization also to build the next steps. What is the next step of visualization? For example, you can do some kind of activation, of data activation. This is done with the data activator. However, there's another important item or artifact. If I click on this little icon here, I can say, okay, pin it. And if I say pin, I can create a new dashboard, say overview. And if I say I create this new overview dashboard and go to this dashboard, you will see our number. And the cool thing is I can place numbers from various dashboards, from various reports on the dashboard. And if I click on it, I will directly jump into the report and can now get deeper into the data for this single number. So let's move on. Let's go back to the front page. And what we can do now, we can also say, okay, I want to assign the dashboard. Obviously, it's not assigned now, but if I click on it, I see my dashboard, so I can assign this also to visual layer. So as you can see, there are various steps you have to go through. The first step is getting the data. Then obviously often you store it in a kind of staging layer. Then the next thing is you want to prepare your data and save it again. And the last step is you want to visualize your data. For everyone who knows a little bit more like the basic data warehouse schemes, you can also bring in the thing what you're using nowadays in some kind of yeah, I would say data lakehouse architecture. Very often this is so-called medallion architecture. Yeah, I want to replace this. And in this medallion architecture, you see a little bit more complex approach. So in a lot of use cases, you will not need all the medallions. So maybe you all only need bronze and gold and do not need silver. So it really depends. But the thing is, this shows you how you get data streamlined. So you're starting with where you get your data from, then staging it in a bronze layer, then go for initial processes to say, okay, basically cleaning with your notebooks, with your pipelines, with your data flows. So then you save it in a pre-prepared scheme. Maybe you did only the clean stuff and preparation stuff, and then you're moving from this raw, or I would say silver layer, so to a golden layer where you do all the right business transformations, where you did your data modeling, where you implemented your star schema. And in the end, you're visualizing your data, you're going for if you want your machine learning services and so on. But basically, this was a short introduction about different skills which are technically related. And at one point, I explained a lot of star schema. And this is, I would say it's not 100% technical related, because you have to understand the business process to model a star scheme. So the data modeling is a crucial part to implement it in this scenario between silver and golden layer, that you can say, okay, I want to analyze all my sales by which dimensions. So for example, you want to analyze your sales by region. You want to analyze your sales by salesperson and so on. So then you have to model your process in order to fit to the star schema. So this is, I would say, it's not only technical, it's a crucial skill to make your data valuable for the users. Okay, thank you. And I hope this introduces a little bit how Fabric is working in the back, how the basic skills which are needed to build a Fabric solution. Thank you for listening to me. Hear you the next time. Goodbye.